Good morning, everyone. This is Sue, and today we're going live on the topic of getting employees involved in the community. And this actually came from a question from Chris Day from Dre from Richland Center. And thank you, Chris, for providing that question to us about how do we get our employees to be more involved in the community. So let's start with just this idea of healthcare organizations doing things in the community or being engaged with their community. Why do we even need to get employees involved in that or have any presence in that? But, if you think about it, most healthcare organizations, especially those that are not for profit, and in particular those that we work with in small rural areas, these are really important community assets, right? These are, these community healthcare organizations are really integral in their communities, and so part and parcel to what their community is. So in breaking down the walls between the organization, the healthcare organization, and its community, this is what we do when we reach out into our community. So we talk about silos within healthcare organizations, but sometimes we can be a silo in and of ourselves as an organization, compared to our community. So community outreach and involvement is certainly kind of just part of the value of being a community asset, and in particular a not-for-profit organization in particular. We really recommend that to break down those walls, that there be a presence outside of the organization in the community, but also to bring the community in, right? So we go out and we bring the community in. We don't just bring the community in when they're sick or injured and need us, but can we bring them in and create relationship and provide value to them even in times when they're not needing services? So that's kind of really the crux of what we're trying to do here is increasing employee volunteerism is really about why are we even doing it? Should we do it? Why is it even important? So that kind of just sets the foundational piece there. But the challenges for that, is that people, how people spend their time and money is very personal, right? And if you think about it, most people are overcommitted in both of those categories with their time and money. Debt is on the rise, by individuals and families across our country, no secret to that. So how people spend their money is very personal, and often we're overcommitted. And then the same is true with our time. How we spend our time is very personal, and again, many people are overcommitted. Think about just this chronic busyness of people in the world, and that's true in myself and all around us, I guess, where we find ourselves overcommitted. So tapping people on the shoulder to ask them to give, or of their time or money towards certain causes, is competing against everything else in their life that, is asking for their time and money. So that's certainly a huge challenge that has to be overcome when an organization has a value to provide community engagement. So the other thing is that, if you think about the idea of employees being engaged in community events that are sponsored by the healthcare organization, whether those are done inside the organization or out in the community, is that really asking employees or engaging employees to do that is truly a contribution that's really related to overall engagement for the most part. So what we see in organizations that have really high employee engagement, you'll find that employee giving and employee volunteering is just higher. There's probably some tactics that are being used to do that, but in particular, just the fact that there's high engagement overall in the workforce will allow kind of a higher level of giving of time and money as well. So it doesn't happen by chance, right? So people really volunteering en masse, giving of their time, giving of their money to the organization through, foundation or other efforts, that doesn't just happen, right? And in particular, it doesn't happen in organizations where overall engagement is very, very low. So if you wanted to do these kind of things in an organization, it's going to be much more challenging if overall your employee engagement is low. So just one more challenge there for you. So what are some tactics? So some tactics that we know have worked in other organizations is, I mentioned, don't leave it to chance. You can't leave it to chance that people are just gonna sign up if you put a sign up sheet, right? So, or you're hosting an event and it sounds really fun and that people are just gonna volunteer. So it's not gonna happen by chance. So they're truly, one important tactic and foundational is you have to have a strategy around it. You have to give it pause and thought. What is it that we're going to do to actually increase, volunteerism and presence in the community or with our community by engaging our employees? So we have to have a well thought out strategy, and we can't just leave it to chance or just, afterthought kind of efforts. And the kind of strategy that we see works is that there's actually a parallel strategy. So there has to be a plan in the organization overall and a strategy for increasing overall employee engagement, okay? So on one level, you've got the strategy about increasing engagement, because as I mentioned, if organizational engagement goes up overall, it gets easier to ask employees to contribute to things such as volunteering in the community or with the community. So you want to have a strategy for that. But then parallel to that, you want to have a strategy for your community involvement. So having a strategy for both is very, very important. So not leaving either of those things to chance, and not just having a strategy about how you're going to engage into the community, but how you're going to organize the efforts to reach your employees to assist you and contribute to those. So you need a well thought out strategy. And then with that strategy, you need a structure. So in our partner organizations, not all of them, but many, where this is a really important key strategic priority is to increase their presence and relationship with their community, is to have an employee-driven structure. And so just like we have employee-driven teams and other that are championing other, purposes in the organization, such as overall employee engagement, you can have a team specifically designated to championing and creating your strategies for community involvement. So this is an opportunity to tap employees on the shoulder. Even in an organization with low employee engagement, you're going to find people out there that they're just wired to do this. They are just, wired and passionate about doing this. And so those are the usual suspects that we would engage in a community team. You can even engage outside of your organization, key players in your community, agencies, etc., that might be out there, and they could actually be part of that team as well. But certainly you want it, majority of the representation on an employee-driven team to be employees in the organization. And really, they're the ones that are going to create the plan and the tactics for what you're going to do in the community and with the community, and how you're going to approach getting other employees involved and engaged in those activities. So you need a champion, and an employee-driven team is a great champion for that. So what are the kind of things that a community team like this, or even a community relations department could employ, is that when we go out and ask employees to engage in something that is above and beyond their job description, their day-to-day job duties, when we're asking them to do that, we should have a well thought out appeal to what's in it for them, right? So just kind of creating that awareness and sense in the organization about what's in it for them. So for instance, what might be in it for them is that, it's well researched that when people are engaged in contributing in things such as community causes, that it actually increases resiliency and happiness. So you can tug on the emotional. What's in it for them is, the joy of volunteering, and really promote that as so. I see that for myself, like when I commit, and I do in my community, to do things like serve on a board in hospice and things like that, is that, sometimes I'll see one of those volunteer commitments show up on my schedule for the day or the week, and then, that state of busyness takes over, and I think, oh, why did I commit to that? Now I'm overcommitted and whatever. But I honor that commitment because I committed. And when I do show up and I follow through on that, no doubt, then I look back and reflect on my day going, oh my God, that was the very best thing I could have done with my time today. It did create joy and happiness. I feel, like I made a difference, etc. So really kind of promoting that emotional appeal, and maybe even linking it to things such as the research. So getting that out there. But also what's in it for employees is really to make it so that they feel appreciated and celebrated by the organization for participating and contributing in this way. Really making it part of the in crowd or fun crowd to be involved in these things, and that people start to feel like, oh my goodness, we'd be missing out if we didn't participate. But that really, provides what's in it for people, is people want to be part of something that makes a difference, and where they feel appreciated and recognized beyond the feelings of resiliency and happiness that can come personally. It also is about socialization and some of the positive aspects of that, of feeling appreciated and part of something that others are involved in. So that's important too. Some organizations, because they're so serious about this, they might have, I saw it out there, a VTO policy, volunteer time off, where there's actually, what's in it for employees is that, in some organizations, not only volunteering, but they're actually compensated for this. That's a decision for the organization to make based on their strategy. In many organizations, they're not compensated for that time of volunteering, but in some organizations, it is part of their policy or their tactics. In some organizations, they've made it part of, an annual goal in the organization, and just like all their other goal efforts, it might even be linked to merit pay or something like that. So I'm not saying you have to have those things to have high levels of participation or volunteerism, but these are some strategies that other organizations have, included in their plan for increasing this. And as well, some great tactics to think about is, what are you already doing that you can use to get out the word of what's in it for people to volunteer, how to volunteer, what it means to volunteer, what's required of volunteers, and how to celebrate and recognize your volunteers. Those are all very key components to a great strategy for increasing volunteerism. You have to have, the what is it, the ask, and also the celebration for those who do participate. And so instead of creating a lot of new ways to do those three things, I think it's really important to just look at what is already existing in your organization and then kind of link on to that. So what do I mean by that is, many of our partner organizations, they have employee training events twice a year. So, what can you do at an employee training event related to training people about or bringing information to them about community engagement? So can you use your training events to somehow appeal to your goals and your plans for community involvement? And so, or your employee forums. So in our or town hall meetings, where usually the CEO is addressing the staff on a quarterly basis, is use this as a place to celebrate your volunteerism. Use it as a place to promote your volunteerism in the community. Your communication board, so all around the organization, if you have visual communication boards, don't let them be silent on the community and what's going on in the community and how employees can get engaged in the community. Maybe there's newsletters. Maybe there's an employee spot on your website. I mean, there's all these things that already exist in your organization. And I would think about those things that are well attended, well read, that are really out there as great ways to reach your employees. And instead of inventing new ways of reaching them, use the common and successful ways that already exist to bring out your message about volunteerism and celebrate your volunteers. Another great tactic is through rounding. So with rounding, you can start to have those personal conversations. So either the community team can round with employees one-on-one, or even leaders could help the community team or the community department in this regard. Is leaders could have a specific rounding question that they ask their employees, on a pretty regular frequency about, what would be meaningful and interesting to them, in the community that they would like to contribute to, and helping them connect up to, what are they passionate about, what are they interested in, and how can you link them up in that regard. It's also a place, even in rounding, where you can ask about barriers. What would be getting in your way of, helping out once a year or whatever is kind of the requirement or expectation or desire of the organization, and ask them what's getting in your way, and feed that information to your community team. So, really, to sum it up, the organization needs a strategy, one, for improving engagement overall. That's going to help your cause for increasing volunteerism from your employees. And then a real strategy around how you're going to engage in your community and how you're going to tap your employees on the shoulder and recognize them and engage them in those efforts. And in particular, having a structure where you're doing it with your employees, not to them, where they're actually not just part of showing up on a day for an hour, but they're actually part of planning what's going to actually be done, and planning the efforts for how to engage volunteers and how to recognize them. So having a strategy, having a structure, and then using that engaged structure and strategy to bring all this to life. As always, we're into this, mantra of the CASE method: copy and steal everything, make it yours, make it better. So, this is another great thing to network with other organizations on. We've linked up some of our community teams from our different partner organizations, those that are just getting started, maybe with a more mature team, to talk to them about, those early days and the challenges and how they overcame them. So really it's about the just start and keep going. Had solid foundational pieces of structure and strategy, then do that continual loop of study, adjust what's working, what's not, the things that are working, continue those, elevate those, make next event better than the one before, and pretty soon you've got a lot of momentum coming. And again, use those things that already exist in your organization as a way to communicate these things and celebrate these things in your employee population. So hopefully there's a few tips there that can help your organization and its efforts to engage employees in being active in and with your community. And if your organization is one that currently doesn't have, organized efforts to increase employee engagement, whether that's in the community or just overall in the organization, we certainly are a company that, prides itself on working with healthcare organizations to improve employee engagement and then leverage that for amazing things like community involvement, great results in patient satisfaction, growth, etc. So if you're an organization out there that's looking for some help with this, please reach out to us. We'd be glad to have a call with you to see if there is a match between what we do and what you need. On our website, capstoneleadership.net, there is a place there where you can book a call with us. And we love having the opportunity each week to talk to healthcare organizations from around the country about, what you're challenged with and whether the work that we have done over the last 7+ years and the learning and the experience that we have would be helpful to you. So if you're interested in having a chat about that, go to our website, capstoneleadership.net, and reach out to us. We look forward to talking with you. Bye-bye now. Have a great rest of your week.